Here, please take this, it's warm.
Thank you so much.
I know your darkest secret.
At 2:17 on a freezing Chicago morning, billionaire Nathaniel Brooks sat alone beneath a bridge wearing a torn coat, holding an empty paper cup in his trembling hands. Just hours earlier, he had been standing inside a $70 million penthouse surrounded by everything money could buy. Now he looked like a man the world had forgotten. But Nathaniel wasn't homeless. He was hiding. He had given himself 30 days to discover whether anyone could love him without knowing his bank account, his family name, or the fortune attached to it. He thought the hardest part would be pretending to have nothing. He was wrong. The hardest part was discovering that the one woman who treated him like a human being already knew exactly who he was. If you believe that kindness, hope, forgiveness, compassion, and second chances can change someone's life, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share this story with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach people who may need them. Nathaniel had spent most of his 38 years surrounded by people who wanted something from him. Investors wanted his signature, politicians wanted his influence, strangers wanted his money, and even some relatives measured affection in terms of what they might inherit. After his mother's death, Nathaniel became increasingly convinced that nobody would ever love the man underneath the wealth. One evening, after turning down yet another carefully arranged dinner with a woman who had spent the entire night asking about his houses and investments, he made a reckless decision. He would disappear for 30 days. No security team, no luxury apartment, no expensive clothing, no credit cards. He would live as a homeless man named Nathan, carrying only a small backpack and enough cash to survive. For several days, nobody noticed him. People passed him on Chicago sidewalks without looking twice. Some avoided eye contact. Others assumed he was simply another forgotten face in a city full of them. Nathaniel quickly learned how painful invisibility could be. Then, on a cold afternoon outside a small community church, a woman named Grace Whitmore stopped beside him. She was 32, worked at a neighborhood food pantry, and had the kind of tired smile that seemed to carry stories of its own. Without asking what had happened to him, she offered him a warm meal. Nathaniel expected pity, but Grace gave him something different. She treated him with dignity. Over the next 2 weeks, she helped him find warm clothes, introduced him to people at the shelter, and encouraged him to apply for work at a local repair shop. She never once asked for money. Nathaniel began falling in love with her, slowly and honestly. He loved the way she remembered everyone's name. He loved how she saved the best piece of bread for an elderly man who always arrived late. He loved that she prayed quietly before opening the pantry each morning. For the first time in his life, he felt seen rather than evaluated. Yet every time Grace smiled at him, Nathaniel felt a growing weight of guilt because he was hiding the truth. Then one rainy evening, everything changed. Nathaniel returned to the shelter and found Grace standing outside, holding an old newspaper clipping. Her face was pale, and tears filled her eyes. She looked at him as though she had finally found something she had spent years searching for. Nathaniel froze when he saw the photograph on the paper. It was him, 10 years younger, standing beside his father at the opening of a massive Brooks Industries factory. Grace already knew. She told him that her father, Samuel Whitmore, had once worked for Brooks Industries. Years earlier, the factory had been closed after a financial decision made by Nathaniel's father. Samuel lost his job, their family struggled, and he later died after years of declining health. But Grace's secret was even more painful. Before he died, Samuel had left her a letter saying that Nathaniel's father had not been entirely responsible. The decision had been pushed through by several executives, while Nathaniel, still young and inexperienced, had unknowingly signed paperwork that helped finalize it. Nathaniel felt crushed. He confessed everything, including his disguise and the reason he had come to the streets. He expected Grace to walk away. Instead, she told him that she had recognized him days earlier. She had seen his photograph years ago and noticed the same eyes. She simply wanted to know what kind of man he had become. Nathaniel broke down because nobody had ever asked that question before. Grace did not excuse his past, but she also refused to judge him for choices he hadn't understood at the time. She told him that wealth could never erase the pain his family had experienced, but it could be used to create something better. Nathaniel finally understood what he had been searching for. True love wasn't someone who ignored his flaws. It was someone who could see the truth and still challenge him to become better. The next morning, Nathaniel returned to Brooks Industries, ended the policies that had harmed struggling workers, created a foundation in Samuel's name, and personally visited former employees to hear their stories. He didn't do it to impress Grace. He did it because he finally understood that money meant nothing if it never made another person's life better. Months later, Nathaniel and Grace stood outside the newly opened Samuel Whitmore Community Center in Chicago. The building provided meals, job training, and temporary housing for people who had nowhere else to turn. Nathaniel looked at Grace and realized that she had given him something no fortune ever could, the courage to face the man he had been and become the man he wanted to be. If this story touched your heart, take a second to like the video, share it with someone who believes people can change, and subscribe for more stories about hope, kindness, forgiveness, and second chances. And before the story ends, leave a comment saying, "Kindness sees the person, not the circumstances." Your words might encourage someone who is quietly struggling today. Nathaniel once believed he had to become homeless to discover whether someone could love him without his fortune. In the end, he discovered something far more valuable. Grace hadn't fallen in love with a billionaire or a homeless man. She had chosen to believe in the imperfect human being standing between those two identities. And sometimes, the greatest wealth a person can find is not sitting inside a bank account. It is the rare person who knows your deepest truth, sees your greatest mistakes, and still believes you have another chance to become better.